Alrighty, everybody, welcome in. My name is Joe, and we're going to play some chess. So I've got the white pieces here. I've been leading off with this Reti opening, and we're just going to see where it takes us today. We've been trying to find games that give us an opportunity to just try to explore different ideas, explore different techniques. You know, we've been looking at how to develop in a way that gives us flexibility, but also puts us on, lets us control the pace of the game a little bit. So I'm going to go get ready for my fianchetto. It's probably too early to do this, but there's nothing my opponent's doing that's disrupting this idea. I'm going to just keep continuing with my fianchetto. Now I'm looking at opportunities to, well, here's the first opportunity. So whenever we see the king, so this has transposed us into kind of a King's Indian attack. It's kind of like we've talked about the King's Indian defense from the black side, but the King's Indian attack has some similar ideas for the setup, and the idea here being that whenever we see the king's pawn, we play, in this case, d3, the king's pawn breaker, to stop anything from coming down this way. One of the other concepts is to set up our pawns so that we are making basically a line towards the king side. The goal being eventually we're going to have a king side attack. I'm just scanning the board, seeing if there's anything that's stopping me from either 1, castling, 2, pushing the pawn, or 3, developing the knight. I think I'm just going to go ahead and castle. That seems like the safest option at this point in time. Just trying to make smart moves. So I'm trying to find ways to develop my own kind of, not theory. Theory is not the right word, but there's nothing attacking this pawn. Just trying to control some space. Not theory is not the right word, but my own kind of themes that I can use that as games develop, I can kind of see what some strategies are. So strategies is one thing that I don't have a good concept of. I think the famous quote goes, tactics is what you do when there's an advantage to be had, and strategy is what you do when you don't have a plan. I don't know. I'll look that up for us. My opponent just castles. I'm going to continue. I pushed too many pawns here. Like, that's just too many pawns to push in an opening. But I'm going to go ahead and stick my dark square bishop along this diagonal. Get my knight developed into the game. Now that we're both castled, though, there's no need to bust open the center right away. But we do have kind of an idea that at some point in time we could bust open somewhere. But I'm trying to develop these themes, right? Like, okay, we're playing a King's Indian attack. Therefore, one of the themes of the King's Indian attack is attack on the king side. I think that's the problem, is I don't remember exactly. And so my learning process right now is to try to develop some of those concepts and some of those strategies so that I have instead of memorizing specific moves, I want to be in a place where I have ideas. Now that is defended twice, 1, 2, and I would only have it defended once. An option I have been debating on, and I haven't done, I do this from when I play the black side King's Indian defense, is rotate the knight out of the way. I don't think I'm going to be pushing the f-pawn. That's just, that always makes me so nervous because from the white side of the board, pushing that f-pawn is such a major defender. But rotating the knight here to challenge this light square bishop, the light square bishop would have to retreat. Maybe it's too soon for that. I'm not certain. I'm going to go ahead and get my other knight developed first, right? Prioritize development. Get my other knight developed first. And this way, if I do something like this, maybe I can rotate the other knight over and help defend it. And so we kind of, you know, build the structure up that way. I'm not certain. This does give us an extra defender of the e4 square. So maybe we could park a pawn on e4 now. One of the things I do know is that whenever we fianchetto, we do want to clear the space for our fianchettoed bishop. The idea being that if my opponent were to, say, put a queen there, they're going to look at trading off this bishop. If I don't want to do that, I'm going to have to hide my bishop away for a second. And that's going to require shifting my rook out of the way, so that way I'm not opening up an outside attack. So we're going to keep that in mind as a potential possibility. It's early morning. It's only about 8:30 in the morning. I finished up a few meetings this morning, and I've got about an hour break before my next meeting. And so this is my breakfast time, where I would normally be getting breakfast, but no breakfast for me this morning. Figured I'd grab a quick game of chess, kind of get that off my mind, and then I can move on with the rest of my day. All right, so I'm just scanning the board now. We both have time on the clock, so I'm scanning the board. My opponent has some good development. You know, there's some options for my opponent here. This is an option to put pressure. Whenever you move pawns, you have to look at the weaknesses they leave behind, right? So the pawn that, for instance, that was on B2 was controlling the A3 and C3 squares. Now that there's no pawn there, nobody has control of that. So those are weaknesses. Notice now that the C pawn is pushed all the way up. There's nobody controlling, right? The B3 square is weakly defended, and the B4 square is not defended. Now, I could shore that up with my A pawn. So there's an option there. But again, in doing so, you create weaknesses. Anytime you push a pawn, pawns cannot be unpushed. All right, and so now my opponent has been calculating and looking at 1, 2 defenders, 1, 2 attackers, so he's safe to park his pawn there. Now, we were talking about the option of rotating our knight anyway, so that works out for us. If my opponent grabs, that's fine. We've got that defended. So these are the things that we're looking at now, as we're looking at do we have any weaknesses? What are our weak pieces? What are our weak squares? And where can we either solidify those, or where can we find weaknesses on our opponent's side, right? If we go back to the beginning of, you know, the principles of chess, and I keep saying this stuff out loud, and you hear me keep repeating the same things over and over again, it's because that's how I think. If I keep reminding myself about these layers, and if I keep reminding myself to do these things, then maybe I'll get better, right? It helps me remember them. So now I'm looking at, I know one of my weaknesses is sometimes I forget to look at all 4 quadrants of the board, and I miss long-range pieces. So now I'm going back and looking at those long-range pieces. What am I missing? We're in good shape here. Like I said, I do now have my 2 attackers here. My opponent's got 2 attackers, so we're both got the defending this square. My opponent's the one that parked a piece there, so you know he's won that square for now. A basic tactic, right? Tactics number 101 says that if there are multiple things, right? If there's an attacker, if we remove an attacker, we've now unbalanced the fight over control. So this bishop is going to have to leave at some point, whether it comes this way or whether it goes this way. Either way, he's going to lose control over the E4 square. My opponent will, and I'll be able to regain control of that. This is an undefended piece. My opponent's going to have to defend it one way or another. There are several ways you can defend a piece. One of them is to basically continue the attack. So this is Gotham Chess. Levi Roseman uses a phrase he calls danger levels, right? So danger levels. I am attacking this. He's attacking this. What are the danger levels associated here? Are there any danger? We now have equal danger levels, right? But if I take here and he takes here, I can then take with check, forcing him to re-grab, and then I can take back. So danger levels we're okay with for now. And if he comes this way with check, that's fine. I've got that covered. Yes, he's going to open up a little bit in front of my king, But let's take here with check, and then we can take back. And we've now eliminated both of our opponent's bishops. I maintain the bishop pair, and I have not disrupted my pawn chain in the process. Does this create a weakness? Nope, that's defended. Okay, so now I do have some weaknesses, right? We are gonna see, let's back up for a second. We are gonna see a weakness here. So would it be better for me to defend this a different way? Nah, I think this is fine. The only debate now is how do I take back this pawn? Do I take with the queen? Because this is what I'm looking at, is this and this are going to conspire to put double pressure on this pawn. And by then it'll be too late to rotate this bishop up, so I don't really know if it matters one way or the other, to be honest with you. I don't think it matters. But I guess if the knight comes down, we can just shift the rook over. I don't think that's a problem. Or, really, in that case, we might even just push a pawn. I'm not certain. But we've now moved into a... Okay, so my opponent is now doing one of the standard themes. Whenever there's a queen, you line your rook up with the queen. Let's go ahead and get our bishop into the game. We've moved past an opening. We're well through a middle game, and we're getting close to that transition point to an end game. The queens are still on the board, which means that, you know, the end game is possible, right? You can have an end game with queens. There's no hard and fast rule of what the beginning, middle, end game is. So I was debating on sticking my queen here and just forcing a queen trade. But that's not going to happen. My opponent now does have two attackers in this pawn. All right, so here's where my weaknesses come in. Where do I find that I'm not great at games? This transition from the middle game to an end game, I don't know how to view far enough in the future to see what kind of favorable end game I want to get into. Now, even if I were to push this pawn, right, my opponent still has three attackers in that square. Pushing this pawn, does that create any weaknesses? Oh yeah, now we have a massive weakness here. We've got our bishop covering that temporarily. There is an alignment issue, man, I wish I could take advantage of. I don't know. So if I go here, captures, and my opponent infiltrates with the rook. Let's just stick our rook here for now, right? We're defending, we're adding another defender here. My opponent has two attackers, we have two defenders. We're just defending a pawn, right? It's just a pawn. But we're at that point where pawns are starting to matter. I mean, there's not much left on the board. Two bishops versus two knights. Couple of rooks and a queen. So I'm wondering if this is the part, like this is the part I just don't know. I'm assuming this is going to open up at some point. I do have two defenders on this. I could, if my opponent pushes past, I could stick a pawn here on e3, and as things start to trade off here, we might open up a file here. But I'm assuming this C file is going to open up at some point. That's what this looks like. Now that is defended. Let's look at this here, right? What's the danger levels? Does my opponent have any... This is a non-defended piece. Are there any discoveries that are really going to kick my butt? No. This is danger level. Not the same kind of danger level. I don't want to steal Gotham Chess's trademark there. But my opponent is now pinned. So this knight is pinned. He's going to have to defend it one way or another. And I'll probably, honestly, I'll probably just trade it off. Yeah, I'll probably just trade it off. I'm looking to see if there's anything. See, I don't have another pawn that can join the attack. No, that gives him an option to slide. I don't want to grab that because that gives my opponent the option to slide the other knight there and defend the knight with a knight. So let's just go ahead and trade this off. This is probably not a great move. If we look at the engines are probably going to say not a great move. So he has 2 attackers here. I do have 2 defenders. I do not want to give up this light square bishop just yet. I'm not at that point. So now it's becoming a time issue. And I just don't, man, I just don't know. Do I start pushing the outside pawn? Everything else is kind of stable. Do I just start pushing the outside pawn? Let's go for it. I don't know. See if we can go back to those central themes, right? And this is where I wish I knew those central themes better on how to proceed from this position. It's a non-defended piece there. So we're adding another attacker here. 1, 2, 3. It is defended, so if my opponent has any crazy discoveries, which he doesn't, at least we'll get a chance to trade off the queens. And I'm just basically going for a draw at this point. I don't know how to find an advantage. We've both played really good, so I'm just going to go for a draw and see where that takes me. That was a mistake on my part. It was a mistake on my part. Should have seen that coming. All right, I'm going to have to start moving a little quicker here because we're under that 2-minute mark, and the 2-minute warning is kind of where I have to click into just move. Now, you never want to just go mindless, right? The goal is never to just brainlessly push pieces around. We always want to at least have some goal. So as I'm talking, I'm thinking through what my opponent could do. Now, my opponent has shut this down completely. Is that a problem? The idea here being that we could open up this outside. Right, this is defended. Yeah, so there's that. I'm just thinking about some of those themes, right? Do I want to... am I correct in thinking that the kingside attack is the way to go, right? We've still got a lot of pieces on the board, but we've also are opening things up, so this could be interesting, especially if my bishop happened to end up here and we were threatening. Now, it's not checkmate because my opponent can slide over. Yeah, but at that point, that does become checkmate. If this knight were to rotate down, I would gladly pick up. He's not going to, obviously. Now, I don't know what this move is for. Maybe to put pressure here. I'm not certain yet, but I don't see that doing anything right away. This is my goal now, is to get this guy out of the way. Start busting open some of the king side here. My fianchettoed bishop does come back as a defensive maneuver, right? It's holding down the fort down here. There hasn't been a lot of stress along this yet for me. Just making sure I'm not getting forked here. At the very minimum, we might be able to pick up, you know, a piece, moving into an end game. Now, danger level, my king is exposed. Yep, forgot about that. That's a good move. That's a good move. Do I have anything I can do here? Forgot about that. Oops, I'm hitting the wrong button. No wonder nothing's happening. Now there's a threat here because the pawn is pinned. The pawn is no longer pinned. Oof. My queen is out of the game. I need to get the queen back in the game somehow. Let's start by offering a queen trade. I need to get some defenders back for my queen. I'm just looking to see if I have anything interesting to do. That comes with check, but it doesn't do anything by itself. So I can rotate my queen back if I have to. So my rooks are out of the game. His rooks are in the game. So this is a threat. And I can't even get in here. So if this is a threat, how do I stop that threat? That's not a threat because I have my bishop there. So I have to get my... So if he takes, I take. Oh, yeah, that does help because I can at least get my rook out of the way. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. Shit. I just don't have a lot of time here. We're gonna end up flagging. I'm not good at these speed end games. I'm assuming he's gonna push. No. Let's just go for a draw. Okay. Here. Yeah, he's gonna gobble here. I was hoping to see if I could get a repetition in. I'm just not fast at these end games. I'm not as fast as I wish I was. That's not how I play. It's not who I am. Have to defend against this. But I don't think I'm going to get it. I think I'm going to lose my queen. I think that's all he has to do is push down a little bit. Yep. And then I run into trouble. Don't think I'm going to win this one, guys. Can't even throw a check in. Okay. Is there anything that we can do here, friends? Nah, there's nothing I can do. He just pushes down the queen once, and he basically gets my queen off the board, and I don't. A queen versus no queen. Queen. He just picks up. And I'm going to give it to him. Resign. GG. Well played to my opponent. So, all right, let's take a quick look at that. The opening I felt great in. I'm not going to complain about the opening at all. So we're just going to skip through some of this. This is the Reti opening. I felt really good with all my moves at this point in time. I think this is questionable. This C4 push. Current. What is current? This is new. This is dump something that they've added. My opponent played bishop to G7, so that's that move. I guess this is saying that this is the current state that we're in. That's new. I guess enough people kept going back and forth. All right. So, okay, C4 is a very common move at this point in time. So, okay, I'm happy. I got that right. Castle. B3 is down here on the list. Looks like the most common move is actually develop the knight. Develop, 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 right? That's what we want to do. We want to get our pieces developed. We want to stay in the game as long as possible. But yeah, I developed here. Okay, so we're a little bit outside of book knowledge at this point in time. Let's turn the opening explorer off. Let's turn the engine on and see what the engine says. Okay, the engine says that we're in a good spot, right? We've gotten through the beginning of the game without giving up an advantage. We've gotten through and set ourselves up for as much success as possible. Now, the question here is, should I have just taken with the f-pawn first? That still leaves, right, so this is the question, that still leaves this bishop on pre, right, under attack. And notice it's now under attack twice, so simply defending no longer is an option. My opponent would have to move the bishop. I'm just looking at squares my opponent the bishop could move to. So there are some available squares my opponent the bishop could move to. This is not so bad, actually, because there's no pawn here to push. I don't know. But let's take a look at the engine, see what the engine says. Okay. Yeah, the engine says clearly the move that I made was a very good move. Then my opponent made the best move. And the engine says go ahead and reclaim. And I went... So about a 1 point difference in the move that I made versus the move the engine wants me to make. But, all right, that's not neither here nor there. Okay, so this makes more sense. This is one of the things that I was trying to figure out. I don't have to capture this pawn right away because there's nothing it can do. There's really no way my opponent can defend this pawn, so I'm guaranteed to pick it up whenever I want. This guy is still stuck. You know what? That's a better... I see that. Okay, so let's put this in the back of our mind. This bishop's stuck and is not going anywhere, so I don't have to capture it right away. My opponent would have to make at least one move to threaten my knight, so at least one move before I have to go here. I said I wish my bishop was on this long diagonal. I don't have to... There's nothing my opponent can do to capture that pawn, so yeah, I could have let that pawn sit there for one more turn, let this sit here for one more turn, develop my piece, and then come back and pick this up whenever I want. And then, yeah, the engineer... Alright, at least I didn't pick up with the bishop, I guess. But look at this huge advantage I have, right? So I have a 4.5 point advantage going into this. So I've done everything I need to do from the opening. I've done everything I need to do to get through a solid middle game. It's that transition into an end game that we know is my weakness. It's going to be one of the areas that I struggle with, and I will always struggle with. I just can't, at this point in time, I can't see what I should be doing. So let's just continue moving on. Rook F to E1, top engine move. Yeah, the engine says I should just go ahead and trade this knight away, get rid of it. I wasn't ready to do that. Yeah, this rook ended up being unnecessary because in the course of this game I ended up pushing it back. Ah, well. Wow, the engine hates that. That's funny. That's funny that this is still the best option. I don't know why it just moves that queen offline. So another tactics. This is a tactical lesson that we can all learn here. So the queen is defending both the knight and the knight. If I grab here, my opponent is forced to grab with the central, their king's pawn, right? Or one of their defending pawns, forced to mess up their kingside structure if they want to maintain control over that knight. And the engine says that would have been a really good idea. A3 is just... I don't know, it doesn't really do anything. The knight's not trapped, obviously. I don't know. But the engine's the engine. The engine can calculate, you know, millions of lines. And I'm lucky if I can calculate 2 or 3 for three or four moves. The engine can do it for, you know, 30 or 40 moves deep. Yeah, engine says don't trade off here. So I still have an advantage, but wow, I've given back a ton. At this point in time, I have a 6-point advantage. And now it's down to a 1.5 point advantage. So I lost, you know, 5 points of advantage just through this series of moves. Yeah, and this is where it kind of fell apart for me, unfortunately, as we shift into an end game. Yeah, this did not work at all. This did not work at all. So. Lesson learned, maybe I need to study my endgame. It's not really my endgame. I need to study how the King's Indian can develop towards an endgame. What's an endgame that I want to find? How do I want to maneuver this transition from the mid game to an end game, how do I want to maneuver that in such a way that that's beneficial for me? This kingside attack, that wasn't it. That was not it at all. And so now the advantage has completely turned. Oof, 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 mega oof. And there's just nothing here for me. Wow. Now, I thought this was closer than it was. I completely misevaluated this. I figured, yeah, okay, my king is a little exposed, but I'm fine. I've got everything covered. My queen is a little bit exposed. Fine, I've got everything covered. My rook's out of the game and not doing anything, so I could see this being a 4 or 5 point advantage for black at this point in time, but a 20 point advantage for black? Overwhelmingly black victory? I did not see that at all. And from here on out, it's basically game over. Oof. And my opponent made a few mistakes there and allowed me back into the game. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Going back under that pawn was a mistake. Why? Oh, because then you just... Oh, no, because if I go here, you could still grab the pawn anyway. What's the difference? What's the... Okay. See, these are the things that I don't understand, and I don't know if I don't get it at all. What is the difference between these two moves? Explain it to me. I don't get it. Queen check. King has to move. Oh, because this comes with check? Is that the difference? This comes with check? Is that the difference? That's the difference. Oops, not that. Whoops. Now my opponent, yeah, and that's the difference. So because that, capturing that comes with check. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Ah, I needed to get behind the pawns. No, I don't. This is all... Oh my gosh, why didn't I do that? Whoa, how did I miss that? How did I miss grabbing a free pawn with check? Ugh. But okay, grabbing the pawn was... I should have just stayed king hunting. Ah, well. Damn, damn, damn. Yep, if I had grabbed this with check, I probably could have forced some kind of repetition. Yeah, probably could have ended up in some kind of draw. Oh, frustrating. I didn't even see that. Did not even see that I could grab that with check. Oh well. Oh well, guys, that's that game. I appreciate y'all sticking around. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I know I did. So I'll talk to you guys next time. Love you all. Bye.